There was just a lot going back where I was like, things in my mind had not been going too well for them for a long while. And I felt that way for a long while. And then they wanted to bring people in. And I said, I don't know if we should be bringing anyone in when these issues are here. I don't know if I like that, especially with smaller talent, because let's talk about money for a second. Be very realistic about this. When you are a company, the nature of your company is when you bring someone in, they don't instantly get hundreds of thousands of followers when you bring in someone who's a small name, who doesn't have any prior audience, who doesn't have any prior anything they're bringing with them, right? This is not a company that just debuts someone unknown and they get a billion people following them. That's not what this company has. We have our own communities individually that do support other people, but for the most part, they're there for us, the members, you know? So I was saying that and I was like, let's be realistic. That's how this company is. So if we bring in a small talent, they're not going to get like blown up to stardom. There's a chance still, but it's not like high. It's not likely or guaranteed or anything like that. It's a small chance. What's more likely to happen is you bring someone in, they get noticed a bit, they get a little bit of a boost, right? Not enough to take the cuts that you take of the things that they make and pay back for the money you put into them. Not enough. You would be running on a negative on them. If we had a lot of money, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Because if we're profitable in other places and then you want to throw extra funds into that just to support it, that's its own thing. That's cool. I'm totally fine with that. But I was like, guys, I don't think we're in that position. This is at the time me not knowing the exact financial situation, but me having looked at things for a long time and been like, yeah, it's probably not going to work, right? I just knew for a long time, like, this is not this is not set up well in a way where we're going to be like super profitable on our own. So I was like, I just don't think we're in a position to do this. And I got pretty much like silence as an answer, like in a call. And some like, well, we're trying to something. It was just a lot of like nothing, you know, a lot of nothing. And some words were said that basically were just hot air, you know. And I was like, well, all right, so you want me to be okay with when later I found out one of the people was one of my own friends. I was like, now I'm extra mad. Right? Like, I have to watch you potentially promise a friend of mine a bunch of things that I know you can't really help with. My friend, someone who wants to do music. Can you pay for a concert for this person? No, because they hadn't been covering stuff like that for any of us. They hadn't been covering anything for us. So if someone comes in, they want to do like music, which means getting a 3D model, doing concerts, doing all this stuff. I was like, that's an expensive venture. Can you help them with it in that you can connect them maybe to some resources for it? Yeah. You help them financially? No. So if they're a small talent and they want to do music, what can you actually do for them? What are you offering them? Genuinely. Like, oh yeah, we'll email a studio for you. Why can't they do that themselves? Right? Like, I was just like, I don't know what we're thinking here. Again, if we had all the money in the world, then I'd be like, hell yeah, because then we could throw funds at stuff and help launch somebody. It's marketing budget. It can actually work out. But we didn't have that. So I was pointing this out. I was pointing this out the whole time. I was pointing this out before I knew who some of the people were that were potentially joining. I was like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And I was just trying to be very realistic. And I was saying things pretty nicely. I had spoken with people in like leadership in separate calls many times about business, about strategy. And I had been bringing up since before I joined, things that we could do to make this profitable. Because I'm no stranger to startups. I understand what you do is you start a company, you get investment, you run at a loss at first, and then over time, you inject that money in the right spots that you can become profitable. That's very normal. That is very normal for startups. A lot of them don't make it, but some do. And I felt like with the talent pool that we had every reason to be able to make it after like a 5-year period, let's say, right? We had every reason to be able to do that. But I was looking at what we were doing and I wasn't privy to every bit of information. Obviously, I was just privy to some little bits. Even with the little bits I was privy to, I said, hey, you should do this, this, and that to become profitable. You're not doing this, this, and that. So I spent so much of my time while being in the group pushing these things forward. We should be doing this, we should be doing that. And I was really trying. Like I said, I was sitting there in meetings with people, like spending real time on this, writing up notes, handing written up things to people, etc. Nothing. And I was like, brother, in my mind, this is not something I said to them. In my mind, I was like, they should just give up. This is what I thought. They should just give up trying to do some of these things that they're trying to do because it's not going to work. Not that they should give up the whole thing, but some people should just step back. Because clearly they're not suited to this. Maybe some people should just take a different role because the role that they're in is not what they can do, right? I was just like, It ain't good. And if the talent are the only ones who are really seeing it, there were some staff that absolutely did. Like I said, like my own manager, he and I would sit there in meetings and we'd go over my stuff for the week. And then I'd also go over like company stuff, you know, and I'd be like, hey, realistically, this thing should happen. Then we should be doing this. This project here is not being done the way it should be, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just pushing stuff up the chain. And it was like once it went past that layer of like our managers, it like died. I don't know what happened to it after that. Like I know and I trust for a fact that my own manager was sitting there pushing these things up the chain, and then I myself was sometimes too, but it just like brick wall, donut wall, that's it, right? I was just like, well, okay, all right, you know. I would see sometimes things be done where money would get spent in a way where I was like, why did we do that? It was mostly in the past. While I was there, for the most part, there wasn't really money being spent on random because I don't think there was money to spend on random like that, like they did early on. But I looked back and I was like, what is some of this? Like, what were people thinking? Yeah, like the Subway ads.
Here they are. It's a lot of money. This is one of the ways that you can get it. There's also this piece of information here, and I'll let you explain how much this costs. So what this says in Japanese is right here, this says that for one of those pillars, 7 days, if I'm not mistaken, it'll cost 40 million yen, which is about $250,000 for one. If you want to take over the whole thing, it would cost 200 million yen, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a ton, okay? It's like an insane amount of money, and that's to get all those pillars for 7 days of advertising.
I remember looking at it at the time even and being like, is that the right usage for that? What if one of those was just a concert instead, right? Like legitimately, you could have gotten an entire like concert for one member for the cost of like one of those Subway ads. So I remember this is stuff I was thinking before even joining. I was just like, look, do I think sometimes spending money on stupid marketing ideas works out? Yes, I've seen it work really well actually. But that one in particular, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, man. A lot of stuff that was odd. But again, you know, I worked on joining because I was approached directly and I was handed a version of a contract. I was not told, you got to sign this. I was told, this is what we hand people to start with. Please lawyer up and work with us on this, you know? That's what I was told, genuinely. I'm not going to pretend that 100% of everything was bad all the time and start punching at them and being an asshole like that. That was good. I had my own lawyer and I sat there and negotiated things, and I ended up with a version of the contract that was very different than what was put in front of me. And it was something that I genuinely was like, yeah, I'm chill with this. And, you know, my plan was to join and be there forever. My plan was to join and fix a lot of things if I could, with full knowledge that it might not work because, again, I'm no stranger to startups. I know how many of them don't work out. And my plan was, well, if it doesn't work out, I will at least have things done in a way where I'll be okay. You know, that's it. And that was, you know, here we are. So am I going to lose some things? Probably, yeah. But I still conducted things the whole time I was there carefully because I knew from before I joined, again, when they were giving initial pitches to me and stuff, like, this looks likely to not be okay. I wish I knew how much of a bad situation some other members were kind of in. I did not realize how much money some of them were just kind of leaving with the company, stuff like that. I did not know these sums. I may have said a lot more beforehand had I known. I still did say a lot. I did a lot to try and make sure people could make informed decisions within my means, whatever I was able to say. And I was internally, you're allowed to say a lot, you know? So I was very outspoken and I was very forthcoming with information. I held a lot of discussions between myself and some other talent and staff and leadership especially to try and make sure that concerns that I had, that they had, were spoken. Because if someone was sitting there thinking about something and going, oh, I don't know if this is right, or I don't know if this thing is done the way it should be, or blah, 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 I didn't want it to die with them just thinking about it in a corner. I was like, let's actually sit down and talk about a lot of things. So I set up a lot of calls and meetings and different things, and I sat down with people and took their concerns and itemized them into lists and all of this stuff and made sure that the concerns were properly heard. You know, I did all of that. I did all of that. And I still feel like I didn't even do as much as I could have. I could have, if I decided to not stream for a while, I could have sat down and just done so much of that. But, you know, I did what I felt was way more than enough considering I was not like getting paid as an employee to do any of this. Yeah, I made sure that a lot of concerns of the talent were itemized and said. and spoken. And especially because some people are just nervous talking about this stuff. Some people are like really unsure about how to conduct themselves in these kinds of conversations, etc. So I made sure I helped there. And so I sat down, had discussions with people. I said, hey, here's what I need. By the time I was doing this, I'm gonna probably make a video talking more in depth at some point, but by the time I was doing a lot of this, I was already preparing to leave. I hadn't really told people that's where I was, but I was already ready for that. I still wanted to help. I stayed longer than I wanted to. I stayed a lot longer than I wanted to sit there and try, you know, and do, again, a lot of the very recent information was not stuff that had come to light yet. So I was like, there's still that Hail Mary that we can do where we can sit here and talk over a lot of this stuff and just see what happens. See if some people are willing to give up the reins on certain things, if some people are willing to adjust strategy, right? Like change what they think we should be doing and just adjust paths. Because again, with the people that we had, no reason why it shouldn't have been able to work, genuinely. So I was like, let's just sit down and talk about it, right? And we did. We talked a bunch, and I even gave my meeting notes to leadership that I was sitting there note taking the whole time while we were talking. I was doing all the work I shouldn't have to do, handed it over, and I said, you've got a week to make a roadmap. So you have to address all the things that we itemized out, say what you're going to do or what you intend to do or what the status is or whatever, and then some sort of timeline. So we have something tangible to go off of, because I was like, look, I'm flirting with the idea of leaving. I was really wanting to leave, but I was flirting with the idea of leaving is what I told them. And this is what I would need to consider staying, is these pivots on these things, right? Really structured meeting. A week later, I'm given a roadmap that I thought was not sufficient at all for me to want to change my mind or even try at all. Some people were like, I'd like to give some of these things a shot. I said, this is to other talent, I said that I already did way more than I signed up for. I set up a damn meeting. I've done more than enough. I was already ready to go. I really hope it works out. But I stayed for quite a while to make sure that I helped them through that. And then I put in some notice ahead of time and was like, yeah, I'll be gone by this date. If you magically conjure solutions to these things, maybe, you know, but you'd have to like cast a damn spell. There you go. And they had some calls with me the whole time trying to have leadership be like, we have some meaningful context for you that might affect how you feel. And I would sit there through a meeting and they'd say some things and I'd be like, that didn't affect how I feel. Thanks. And I would just be like, all right. So I just stuck with it, and I ended up being the first one to like publicly choose to leave, you know? So that's... And here we are. I regret not being more outspoken internally earlier. I say that though, I actually really, I said that to one other member and they were like, no, you were really outspoken. And I'm like, yeah, but I should have been like an asshole about it. I was never an asshole about it. And now looking back, knowing what I know now, I should have been an asshole about it. At the time, I didn't really feel like I had a reason to be like that. I really didn't feel like it was worth being that way. But yeah, now that other things have come to light, I'm like, damn, I got some really vindicating messages from people being like, you were right. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, again, hindsight is 2020. At the time, it didn't feel right to push that way. And I didn't want to push anyone into a decision just because I felt so strongly. I was like, look, I've known this was cooked since the beginning. I was really hoping it wouldn't be. I put time in, I put effort in, I did more than enough. I'm going. I didn't need to drag everyone else into that, right? I needed them to see for themselves their own stuff not working out. And I wasn't going to be the bad guy and be like, you have to leave with me, haha, and like rub my hands together and look evil, you know? So I didn't do that. But yeah, looking back, I'm like, damn, I should have done that. But that it only would have made sense if I knew everything that I knew now, right? It really would have made sense only in that scenario. But yeah, I don't know. I did what I could. So there you go. I'm trying to be a bit vague. Depending on how things go, I will be able to speak less vaguely in the future. I'd love to pull up like the document I made at the time of all the stuff we wanted to ask for. I don't think there's some stuff on there I will never say just because I shouldn't. There's other stuff that I'm like, yeah, I think I just have to wait before going into specifics or anything like that, you know? Again, gotta be nice and careful. But yeah, I don't know. I really, all I can say is after all of this, I really tried. I tried since the beginning. Almost all of the projects that we did do were my idea or I was pushing them forward. I think with everything considered, there's just a lot I want to know. There's still a lot I want to know. And that's another reason why I'm being pretty careful about what I say still as well. There's a lot of the issues came about because no one knew anything realistically. And I know there's some people online being like, how does this person not know this? How did that person not know that? How did this person only find out now? Blah, blah, blah. It's really easy to obscure information when you don't tell anyone anything, right? And everyone is like not sure. So yeah, and there's a lot of inner workings. Again, like right now is not the time for me to say, but I completely understand how this happened. you know? I just want a lot of specific information that I don't know if I'll ever be able to get, but I would like that.